Good morning, everyone. My name is Ingo Hageford. I'm a senior director with Simplify Solution, focusing on the SAP Business Data Cloud topic and topics such as like Datasphere and the overall data management portfolio from SAP. So I'm going to start with just two, three quick slides on who we are as Simplify and why perhaps you should consider us as your trusted partner. And then we're going to dive right into Business Data Cloud, and we're going to leave a couple of minutes for questions as well, as I'm sure there's lots of questions with the topic being like brand new. So Simplify solution actually has been around for several years now, and we're SAP partner with the focus on SAP Analytics, SAP Planning, topics like BPC. And in addition, we're also focusing on the data management area. So topics such as Datasphere, BW, HANA Cloud, as well as now, obviously, the Business Data Cloud. In addition to your normal standard services, one of the advantages we bring to the table as well is that we have a set of pre-configured business content, such as, for example, workforce planning, sales planning, demand planning. Those are basically pre-configured applications that allow us to also shorten the overall implementation cycle. In addition to what I already mentioned, if you look basically us up on the website and you take a deeper look, you will notice that the people basically as part of like Simplify have a huge set of years of experience in the SAP market. It's not that we just have been around for like 1, 2 years. You can see all the people that we actually have a long time history in the market. Another part that I'm specifically proud of is basically that we're not just looking actually to implement technology for the pure technology's sake. For us, it's important that at the end you see value in what we discuss and you basically see a very clear business outcome. As you can see, one of our goals is that our customers basically become 100% references, which I think you would agree is a great goal, but we want you to see us as your trusted advisor that helps you to basically get actually a real business outcome from the project. In terms of customers, you can basically see we have lots of different customers around the globe. This isn't just, Canada or North America. It's around the globe, all kind of different kind of industries. And the implementations going from as simple as using SAP Analytics Cloud for analytics purposes, for planning. It goes to BPC. It goes to basically like replacing other planning solution with the SAP Analytics Cloud solution, up to topics such as Datasphere, BW, and HANA. So why are we actually here, and what is SAP Business Data Cloud? So with Sapphire being last week in North America and currently being held in Europe, I'm pretty sure you can see all the buzz around Business Data Cloud, and it has been available now kind of like, from SAP for a couple of weeks, and everybody has been talking around. So what is actually SAP Business Cloud, and what kind of impact does it have for your overall SAP landscape? What value does it deliver for you as an SAP customer? And for example, what does it mean for you as an existing Datasphere customer or an existing BW customer? So we're going to take a quick look at a general kind of like definition, and then we're going to take a deeper dive into some of the concepts that actually SAP Business Data Cloud is now adding to your overall SAP landscape. Don't be surprised, I'm just switched off the camera so you can see the slide in full screen, and we're going to come back then Q&A, and I will put the camera back on so you can see. So over the years, you can see that basically all the customers, there's always the key problem of being able to actually get the value out of the data that you have. Now, the data might come out of different line of business solutions. You might have like, S4 for finance, you have success factors for HR, you might have a non-SAP application, there might be a Concur for expenses, and you want to be able to leverage basically the data, combine the data, harmonize the data, and then obviously analyze. You want to be able to actually get like value out of all the data that you have. It's a very kind of like common problem, and it's not new. This problem has been around for kind of like a couple of years now. So if we go a little bit deeper into kind of like your typical customers ask, it's starting with like just being able to access the information, but shouldn't be too complicated. You want to be able to access the data from, for example, S4 and Concur. You want to be able to combine it. You want to keep all that rich semantic information that this is your employee, these are the expenses, this is like, your salary, this is your kind of like, wages that you have. You want to be able to keep that information, but also you want to be able to actually access the information across all the line of businesses you have and create one view, so that instead of kind of like running one report for your HR and having one report that gives you the expenses and then one report that gives you the salaries, and then you kind of like take out the paper and start adding things up manually. Obviously you want to have that unified view. And with AI and generative AI topics, being on the rise and everybody looking at how they can leverage, you also want to be able to create that data foundation that gives you that trusted and high quality set of data, where you then can actually put, for example, products such as Joule on top of it, and being able to simply ask a question towards the information. Now, when SAP basically started SAP Business Data Cloud, one of the items that was very obvious is that still being able to extract the information, add all the business logic, or potentially recreate the business logic because, it was lost as part of the extraction layer, and then being able to actually do what we just discussed, being able to combine different line of businesses information, get the information out of the data, is still not easy. And I'm sure several of you that are currently here have gone through this. Like, data, basically get the data out of from a perhaps BW extractor. Perhaps you're using Datasphere, running a data flow, a replication flow. You're accessing tables, accessing CDS views, different kind of things, and still you're recreating basically the logic that the application has. And this is the biggest goal that SAP has put out there with Business Data Cloud, being able to actually shield you as a customer to some degree from this, from having to go through this cycle. But also, with that goal, it means you have quicker access to the information. Simply, the actual value that you get out of the data becomes much more tangible, much quicker. So, here we are basically, so to speak, yesterday or today. We have different kind of data sources. I'm sure some of you run BW, some of you might run Datasphere, some of you might have a non-SAP data warehouse, some of you might use Databricks, and we're basically talking about siloed information. It's not being harmonized across the different line of businesses. It might not even be available for all line of businesses. Again, this is where Business Data Cloud now is coming in with several like new and very different kind of like concepts compared to what has been there with, for example, BW or Datasphere. The key part is really to enable the customer to quickly turn around, leverage the information, leverage the data out of your S4 system, and basically show the information that is available, show the value to your business users. And on top of that, being able to have that data foundation for AI. So, what is Business Data Cloud? So, first of all, Business Data Cloud, as you can see on the image, isn't a replacement for a Datasphere or a business warehouse. When the first kind of like notions from Business Data Cloud came out from SAP, there was a lot of talk on social media like, oh, does this replace Datasphere? Does this replace BW? Does this replace the BW bridge? No, it's not a replacement for it, but basically think of Datasphere as the combination, and you see on the screen here, of Datasphere, Analytics Cloud, your BW system, and Databricks into basically a new way of actually accessing your SAP and non-SAP information. But also, it starts with the notion of data products from SAP. And we will go into details in a couple of seconds. A little bit more in details. So as you can see at the bottom, first of all, and that is from a technology perspective, one of the items that is new with Business Data Cloud. So all the information is basically being stored as part of the object store. So it's not that you're loading data like most of the customers do today into Datasphere and it sits basically as part of HANA Cloud, but you're also now using the object storage, which should reduce over time a little bit of the storage itself. You can also see the notion of managed sources and customer managed sources, which we will talk about in more details when we talk about SAP's data products. But it's important to understand that there will be applications that SAP delivers. You can see the term inside apps now being called intelligent applications that are managed by SAP. And then there is the option for you to customize what, for example, SAP has delivered in a customer managed area. The additional items you can see here as part of the Business Data Cloud on the left-hand side, you will hear a lot the term of a Business Data Cloud cockpit. So you basically have an overall like cockpit inside of Business Data Cloud that allows you to manage things like, what are your tenants, like what's your Datasphere box, what's your Analytics Cloud system, what's your BW system, what's your Databricks system. But also it allows you to actually install, as an example, updates from data products that SAP delivers. You also have your BW system available, and some of you might have noticed already the 3 letters behind. So if we're talking BW, it needs to be as part of a private cloud edition. So it can't be kind of like your good old on-premise BW system. It has to be lifted up to a private cloud edition. And then there's something called a data product generator, which allows you to actually push data from BW towards, for example, Business Data Cloud, towards Datasphere, or, for example, Databricks. And we will come to that in the next webinar in a couple of weeks. And on top, we have our Datasphere system, we have Databricks, and then on top, from an analytics perspective, the Analytics Cloud solution. So now let's go into more details on what some of these terms actually are that we just discussed, that we just saw that Business Data Cloud brings to the table. And we're going to start basically at the bottom of the notion with the data products. You might actually, when you hear the very first time about data products, think about data products in a way of like, the good old business content that there is in BW. But this is basically, a little bit more than just kind of like what you used to in the business, in BW as the business content. A data product is basically something that SAP delivers in terms of like, so think of it as an approved data set. This could mean master data. This could mean transactional data. Like think of, for example, your customers, your cost centers, your profit centers in terms of actual master data. There is the actual information. There is, let's say, a customer 100. There is the address. There's names. There's description. There could be hierarchies. Those are basically things that SAP delivers in form of an actual modeled entity to you as part of a data product. You can actually search for them, so they integrate with your product catalog. So in terms of like the Business Data Cloud cockpit, you can actually search for certain kind of like data products. They come in like, packages. There might be a package for finance, which has multiple master data and transactional entities that you then can actually leverage. There is the notion, as we noted in the beginning, of an SAP managed product as well as a custom managed product. So think of it as an example. You might look for a certain kind of like analytics workflow that you would like to see. So perhaps we want to see our expenses out of Concur and compare them with perhaps our wages that we have as part of SuccessFactors. So now there is a data product that SAP actually delivers as out of the box, and you can activate the data product, which then would give you the necessary entities to model the master data as well as the transactional data. And also important, the master data in this case is being harmonized across different kind of LOBs. This would end up in the SAP managed area. And when I'm saying SAP managed, think of it as an actual space inside of Datasphere, which is managed by SAP. So think of it as a read-only, consume-only scenario. Now, there might be a case where you want to customize now, perhaps your employee master data. Perhaps you have additional attributes inside of SuccessFactors that you would like to see. So you can actually reuse what SAP did, copy it into your custom managed area, and then actually create those customizations and make the necessary changes in the data model. So you still have the SAP data product, and now you have, so to speak, a customer managed data product. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide because I assume that most of you are fully aware of kind of like what's actually the real value of something like a data product, or even when we were talking BW or a Datasphere of business content that SAP delivers to you, which is simply time and cost. So instead of like you trying to figure out which tables and which fields you need to actually do the modeling, SAP is delivering that to you, such as like, your business content, your extractors, your objects in BW, your content in Datasphere, and now with Business Data Cloud, even like further in the form of data products and inside applications. So, what are intelligent applications? So, first of all, you might have heard the term inside apps, which is now being rebranded as intelligent applications. So, these are basically the same things. And people are basically at the point of like, changing all the wording right now. So, intelligent application are basically out of the box content that SAP provides you that is based on the data products that we just talked about. So it's not just kind of like, for example, if you compare it to your business content from BW, it's not just kind of like, here's your query, here's your cube, but instead, basically, it's the complete end-to-end scenario for a specific case. It's starting with the data products, which can contain analytical models in Datasphere. It could be dashboards inside of Analytics Cloud. It basically has the necessarily data flows and replications in there. There might be basically like customized dashboards with like, with or without scripting inside. There might be things like Fury scenarios as part of intelligent applications. To give you an example, and I'm sure it kind of like you have seen these kind of items before, there, for example, there is an intelligent application which is called Core Enterprise Analytics, and it has a working capital dashboard as part of it. So the working capital dashboard is your SAP Analytics Cloud story. But the overall package of, in this case, the enterprise analytics contains pretty much starting from the data sources S4 to the replications, the ETL jobs, the modelings, building the entities for the master data, for the transactional items, creating that analytical model, and creating the story on top of the analytical model. Basically, everything in one package. So to show this slightly different, you can see basically that from bottom to the top, the intelligent applications basically contain everything. Your data sources, imagine basically S4, things like, success factors, Ariba, data sources from your SAP application. The data products are actually using those data sources. You can then activate the data products, your analytical models, your different entities, and on top, basically your stories with SAC. The third part I would like to highlight is basically how does now BW play a role as part of Business Data Cloud. We're not going to go in full details because we do already have a session scheduled for next month where we will spend much more time on it, and we're going to go in full details like how this actually impacts your BW and what are the benefits out of it. So first of all, as I mentioned in the beginning, Business Data Cloud is not here, so to speak, to just replace your BW system. It's basically here to give you an opportunity to include your assets that you have as part of BW. And in terms of versions, we're talking 7.5 and we're talking BW for HANA, to actually bring that into Business Data Cloud, which then puts you in a position that you can now leverage the data that you have in BW and make it part of your overall Business Data Cloud journey. There's basically 3 steps as part of this journey. Step number 1, as I mentioned in the beginning, your BW system needs to move to a BW private cloud edition. So you're going to have to lift it up from basically like, classic, on premise to basically a private cloud edition scenario. One of the option as part of that is in case you like running BW 7.5 or like, an older version, to move actually and migrate instead of just doing a lift, you're moving to BW for HANA as well. Then when you do have basically your BW system as part of Business Data Cloud, you can actually look at 2 scenarios. Number 1 is simply like, net new use cases where the BW actually data just becomes part of the overall story, where you actually push the data from BW, for example, into Datasphere, and then from Datasphere potentially into Databricks, you're running an ML AI scenario, and the data comes back into Datasphere. But you also have the option, what is called a BW data product generator. And I think it was mentioned in the previous slide, and we will come back to that. So that actually allows you to push the data into Datasphere. In addition, You also have the already existing model transfer from Datasphere, where, for example, you can reuse the model that you did in BW inside of Datasphere. And then last but not least, the last step you see here as an innovation is simply to look at basically how you can actually replace your existing BW workflows with the data products, with the inside applications that SAP provides, or in addition to that, with scenarios you model inside of Datasphere using things like data flows, replication flows, and your analytical models. Next step is, and some of you might have seen this as a huge surprise, prize is a Databricks. So important, I'm not forgetting, it's called SAP Databricks. So we will do more details in a separate sessions. You will see that there is an SAP Databricks flavor, and then there is the enterprise Databricks, where like certain items are included as part of SAP Databricks, and enterprise Databricks has some additional capabilities and features. I'm sure a lot of you already have worked with Databricks or know who Databricks is. Basically, Databricks is one of the leaders as part of having an AI ML data platform. And with Databricks joining basically the Business Data Cloud, you now have the ability to actually share the information from, for example, Datasphere or your BW environment, do actually a sharing with the Databricks platform. The people are using Databricks will be able to leverage that data, run their scenarios, and then, for example, push the data back into Datasphere, or for example, simply share the outcomes. In terms of main capabilities that as part of the SAP Databricks story, you will be able to leverage is, first of all, you will hear the term delta sharing, or some people refer to it as zero copy, quite a lot. So delta sharing is basically a protocol that was developed originally by Databricks. And what it allows people to do is basically share the information of a data set without the need to duplicate the data. So to give you a concrete example, let's say we have S4 data and we loaded the S4 data into Datasphere, and now we want to run a machine learning scenario. So we can now basically share that information from Datasphere with the Databricks platform, and we can use the delta sharing protocol, which means we don't have to load the data from Datasphere into Databricks, but instead we basically would use the delta share, and it's, so to speak, a zero copy scenario. The other items that you will be able to leverage as part of the SAP Databricks platform is the Unity catalog that Databricks brings to the table. You have the Databricks SQL, so think of that as your SQL data storage, data interface, the Databricks notebooks, and you also will be able to leverage the Mosaic AI integration from Databricks. So to give you a concrete example for something that you can leverage Databricks for is, so let's assume we basically want to run a risk assessment on our customers or our suppliers. So this could mean that we need information out of our own systems, such as S4. We want to basically see potentially the history, which might be inside of BW, could be Datasphere. We basically have it as part of our data warehouse. And then we want to basically run the prediction model to see which of our customers or suppliers might give us, so to speak, some headache based on the credit risk assessment. So in this case, if we assume we have basically S/4HANA BW as our source systems, there might be also additional third-party data. This is where, for example, the data marketplace from Datasphere comes in, being able to, leverage external data already ready to be modeled. The other data products that you might actually leverage that could either mean like, actual SAP data products with, already existing models. It could mean also a custom space where you start actually, reuse some of the data products, but you had to customize them based on your needs. And then you actually do the delta sharing with the Databricks platform. You run basically your prediction model, and then the outcome goes back into Datasphere, and you can then create basically your analytics cloud story on top of that. An additional item that you will see as part of like your business data cloud scenario is also the integration with Joule. So for those who basically have Datasphere today, or like are in the process of evaluating Datasphere or Analytics Cloud, Joule already integrates in two main areas with Datasphere and Analytics Cloud today. So there's something called analytical insights that Joule is able to provide based on models that are either in SAC or in Datasphere. So you can then simply use natural language and ask questions against the data that you actually have. There's another integration where basically that SAP is now putting out, and it's currently in a beta phase, where you can leverage the business AI in combination with Datasphere to generate basically metadata. So in this case, we're talking about metadata for your data catalogs. So imagine you have an analytical model and you want to put in like things like tags and entries for a glossary, a description, those kind of things can be actually generated by business AI. As I mentioned, currently that is in a beta phase. Uh, we, as a partner from SAP, are allowed to take part, and it basically gives you the option to generate those kind of things. So with Business Data Cloud, basically Joule, Joule is able to use Business Data Cloud as your data platform for these kind of like workflows. This could mean analytic insights. This could mean being able to leverage capabilities such as like generating automatically some metadata. So if we're now looking at the overall items that were basically just discussed and that we basically looked at it, um, this is your overall landscape. You can see we'll basically have, SAP Analytics Cloud, we'll have SAP Datasphere, we'll have our BW system, we'll have basically data being stored in the object store, we'll have Databricks, and then on top we have our business AI as part of like perhaps an embedded scenario. But you can also see some of the elements are new. Like I'm sure there's customers on the call with BW, but today there is no, so to speak, data product generator as part of your BW system. So I highlighted basically the elements that you have to die as the new items. So it starts with the most easiest one. Obviously, Databricks as part of the Business Data Cloud offering is new, and it brings in the machine learning and AI cases as well as the Unity catalog. So the Unity catalog also gives you the option to create a single catalog entry across the Business Data Cloud solution. From a BW perspective, Business Data Cloud allows you to basically leverage your existing BW system. Yes, it has to move to a private cloud edition. but it gives you also an option to extend maintenance periods. You will see that SAP talks about it that, for example, if you running a BW 7.5 system today, you might have noticed that end of maintenance is 2027. SAP is willing to extend that. So if you moved your BW 7.5 to a private cloud edition as part of the Business Data Cloud solution, your maintenance period is basically being extended to 2030. That includes add-on options, for example, such as a BPC implementation. In addition, what we have new here as part of your overall business data cloud is the notion of the data products. And you can see here as well, we're talking SAP managed data products as well as custom managed data products or like a BW based data products. So an SAP managed data product means that you were able to basically find a content package like an inside application that fits your use case. You then actually activate that package, which creates the necessarily, so to speak, ETL layer as well as the modeling entities as part of Datasphere. And in this case, these objects become part of an SAP managed space, which for you as a customer is read only. You can leverage the options, but you can, for example, in this case, not change how, for example, the dimension is being modeled or how the analytical model is being created. If that is a requirement, perhaps you need additional attributes for your employees, or you want to change the fact model that you have, then that actually becomes a copy of whatever modeling entity you have into your customer managed data space inside of Datasphere, and then you can actually leverage those content objects, customize them, and move to the inside applications. And then you can see if you actually generate something out of your BW system, that becomes a so-called BW-based data product in its own area, which you then can use as part of Datasphere and bring it into a space and use as part of the modeling exercise. Now, last but not least, where is basically Business Data Cloud available today? And what are the main data centers that are planned? Please, if this is critical information for you, keep an eye on basically SAP's website, keep an eye on the roadmap. This is obviously always just a point in time representation, which can change very, very quickly. So you can basically see the black items on the map of where Business Data Cloud basically was available since launch, which was February. And then you can see the light green ones is basically the second quarter, and the blue ones are Q3 or Q4 this year. So you can see the main items that are covered is basically like, in the US, you have Frankfurt, like kind of like Amsterdam in Europe, and then in like Asia, you basically have like, Tokyo with coming with like, India and Australia right behind it. So before we open up for like Q&A, so why should you consider actually looking at Business Data Cloud? What is different from Business Data Cloud than solutions that you basically might be using today or that kind of like you've used in the past? First of all, it's simply kind of like the approach that SAP takes. So again, Business Data Cloud is not here to replace your Datasphere system. It's not here to replace kind of like your BW box. It's not here to replace your HANA Cloud environment. It brings actually these things together into a uniform platform. In addition, the notion of a data product, the notion of an insight application is different compared to what you have seen in the past with business content. You basically now have SAP managing a complete end-to-end workflow from a data source, a source system, up to an actual dashboard. And if there's basically content that you want to leverage that you're able, that fits your use case, all you have to do is pretty much activate it, hook up your S4 system, and you have the information available afterwards. On top, keep in mind that we're now talking about Databricks being part of Business Data Cloud. So not only actually are you able to bring in the information from SAP, you also have the ability to basically bring in the non-SAP data, as well as basically using Databricks as your kind of like AI and ML platform, and use elements as part of like, things like Joule, as well as business AI as part of your overall journey. In case this is something that you're interested in, and I will open up for questions in a few seconds, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to basically help you and kind of like think of it as a kind of readiness check with you. Like, where are you in the journey to potentially to move to Business Data Cloud? And we also have additional sessions already scheduled for you. As you can see, next month we're going to take a look what Business Data Cloud actually means for you in case you have BW, as well as in July we're going to take a look what does Business Data Cloud actually mean if you're an existing customer for Datasphere or Analytics Cloud, and what value can Business Data Cloud deliver to you in these two scenarios. With that, I would like to basically open it up for questions. And as I mentioned, let me just switch back on my camera and let me actually take a quick look at some of the questions that already are there. Again, as I mentioned, in case you have any kind of questions, please use the Q&A window to basically put in your questions, and then we will go through them and basically answer them. So yes, so anything, the webinar, the slides, anything will be made available. So there's the question if we're going to make this available. Absolutely, you will get access to the recording, you will get access to the slides and any additional information that we have. So there's a question from Muhammad. Are there any possibilities of grounding the analytical and planning models from Datasphere to Joule to get a better response to natural language questions? In case I'm not kind of like understanding the question correctly, please feel free to kind of like put another question in there. So Joule today basically has the ability to leverage your analytical models, so import models, and Joule does have the capability to leverage Datasphere live connections as well. So to answer your question simply, yes, technically that is possible today. So there was basically last month the release of what is being referred to as the analytical insights of Joule, where you can actually hook up Joule to your SAC and Datasphere tenants, and then you can simply use natural language to ask questions. There's a few prerequisites, one of them being that your Datasphere and your SAC system need to use the same identity provider, and you can then index models either from Datasphere or from SAC. If that's something you're interested in, I would also highly recommend to take a look. There's a blog from SAP on some best practices where they talk about topics like synonyms and how you can actually influence the metadata that comes from SAC and Datasphere to make sure your end user is going to get the right outcome. There's another question from Muhammad. Is the Simplify FI team currently working on any consolidation use cases for clients that are currently on SAC and Datasphere and would transition to BDC? It would be interesting to hear more about the industry specific use cases. Yes, so I'm happy to basically share that. Again, as I mentioned, that isn't part of kind of like this webinar, but we do have basically content available for things like SAC. There's also like consolidation is one of the topics. Feel free to basically reach out afterwards and I get you in touch with the right people that can then share more details about the content that we have about basically the prepackaged applications and how that relates to topics like consolidations. So a couple of other questions. So there's a question from Shubham, and sorry if this I'm not pronouncing it 100% correct. Bear with me. So how can we use existing BW 7.5 on GCP? So I assume we're talking about Google Cloud Platform. With data products, do we mean that the same BW objects like an info provider queries can be used as it is, or by using a data product generator as an add-on, we need to migrate, convert those BW objects to Datasphere objects? Okay, so very good questions. Let me go back to the one slide here to give a little bit context. So the question is basically, how can we leverage our BW 7.5 as part of a BW Business Data Cloud? And then there was the notion of Google Cloud Platform. So the Google Cloud Platform support for Business Data Cloud, I would highly recommend to keep an eye on the basically the data center roadmap. I'm sure over time that SAP will communicate the details on where and when things like Google Cloud Platform and Azure and so on will be supported. Now, coming back to the question on BW. So step number one is your BW system needs to become part of the private cloud edition. So on-premise is not an option. Then number two, you basically have two main scenarios to leverage your existing assets from BW as part of Business Data Cloud. Number one is what you have today, and it's being called model transfer. So you can, for example, use BW existing info provider, for example, a BW4, do a model transfer, which means you create automatically a Datasphere model that points to the BW tables. So say model now in Datasphere, which still means the data is in BW. Second option is what is being referred to as the BW data product generator. So you take, for example, an info provider, you generate a data product, which means you extracting the data from BW, you're pushing it into the data product layer within Datasphere or, for example, Databricks can pick up the data that you extracted and you pushed into the data product layer. Still, your ETL and everything is done in BW. So now we're coming to the last part here. So the first two, the shift is not replacing your BW system with new things. So then over time, depending on which BW version you have to look then at options, for example, replace the complete workflow that you have today. So going from source, ETL, info objects queue that you have, let's say, in your BW box with the managed data products, for example, from SAP or a custom data product using things like Datasphere, Databricks, and so on. I hope that kind of like explains those options. As I mentioned, that will be part of next month where we go into details as well what this really means. So Shubham, let me know if that answers your question. I hope that kind of like gives a little bit more background. There are some details on the data product generator available as part of the overall community already, and it shows kind of like what kind of BW objects you can leverage today already in terms of like queries and info providers. Okay, so there's a follow-up question from Shubham, and I assume the slide that I have showing right now. So in both the first two cases, we are using the analytical model as a target of a BW info provider. That is correct. So the first two cases, meaning we either doing a BW model transfer or we're using the data product generator, you would then use Datasphere and create basically your analytical model. With the model transfer, it would be generated. With the data product, you would still have to put the model in place on top. And that would then basically read the information from your BW system or the data that you extracted and surface it. That's the important part. Your BW workflow didn't change. You basically pushed the data into Business Data Cloud. You didn't replace the existing BW workflow. There were a few people that raised their hands. So Shubham, I assume that answers the question. So I assume then I can ignore basically the raised hand on that. There's another question: how can we use BEX queries as a source? To my understanding, you can leverage the BEX query as part of the data product generator. As I mentioned, that will be confirmed for the next session for sure. The model transfer, I would have to look it up, but I do think the model transfer does support the BEX queries as well. Not 100% sure, but very sure that it does. So you should be able to leverage those in both scenarios. Okay. Right now, I don't see any additional questions coming in. We also are coming slowly to the end of the hour. So in case if there are any questions, make sure you get them in, because even if we kind of like, not able to answer it right now, we will basically then kind of like make sure it does get answered and followed up. Um, I assume the raised hands, there were a few people that raised hands, got answered with the questions. So if there are no further kind of like, questions in there, I would like to say simply thank you for attending this morning webinar. I want to highlight that if you want, first of all, you will see the slides. Make sure you register for the upcoming webinars in terms of focused on the BW as well as the Datasphere site. And I'm sure we will see again. And just want to say thank you for attending our webinar this morning. Thank you.